right, Shalom. You reached the Heat Parade channel. My name is Azim Awath. But first and foremost, I want to say, Call Halayim, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Harachach Wadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders. 7:13:19, where I learned this truth from and who rule well. Salutations to the Bakiyar, the elect, the 144,000. That's 12,000 men from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. The 12 tribes of Israel consist of you so-called blacks, Latinos, and indigenous of America. The 144,000 being the governing body within the one-third. The rest of the one-third comprises of elect men, women, and children. Shalom to the Israelites scattered due to the diaspora and also the triangular trade. So our people come looking like different ethnicities, having various complexions. So it's not a black thing. We're not the black Hebrew Israelites. We're just Hebrew Israelites. Shalom to those that died in this truth. Says the dead should be raised up first. Those that will be accompanying Yahweh Shah on his return, including our King Masha, who is King David. And as always, it's an honor and privilege, honor and blessing to continue to do this work. The water Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahweh Shah for answering my prayers and permitting me to do such. Baba Kashah Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahweh Shah allowed us to be an edifying lesson to at least one member of the elect. Now, I forget the title of the video, but I know it was Substitute for Camp last week. And the duration was 4 hours and 50 minutes, almost 5 hours. And there was a statement made by Elder Apostle Tahar saying that he perceives that America is going to get hit before Yahweh Shai returns. And, that's something that's been on my spirit for a couple of years, that there's going to be a nuclear exchange before Yahweh Shai even comes. And, he aligns it with the 10th part of Babylon Falls. And, you have to think that if these nations are going to surround America, the daughter of Babylon, where nothing goes in and nothing comes out, you have to ask yourself, where would the American military even be? For America to allow it to be sieged. So you have to think that the American military is going to get its ass handed to it. But it says to the nitty gritty. It says the 10th of Babylon Falls, which we know Babylon to be America. This theme ties directly to Babylon the Great, America, being struck with sudden judgment, internal collapse, and cascading communication failures. One post shall run to another. So I'm going to use Copilot. This is Revelation chapter 11, verse 13. It says, in the same hour was there a great earthquake. And the 10th part of the city fell. Right. Where you get that word decimation. We also know that America is going to be destroyed in an hour. Decimate. decimate, 16th century, to select by lot and put to death every 10th man. Let me read that again. It says to select by lot and put to death every 10th man. From Latin, which you know that came from Rome, decimatus, past participle of decimere, the removal or destruction of 1/10, which this video might be a little long, depending on how the spirit flows. So I said, how big of a portion of the United States would a Poseidon drone take out? Now, this is just one drone, right? But let me wait on that. Let me wait on that. Let me go back to Revelation chapter 11, verse 13. It says, in the same hour was there a great earthquake, and the 10th part of the city fell. And in the earthquake were slain of men 7,000. And the remnant were affrighted and gave glory to the power of heaven. You know, so there was a complete amount of people that perished. And it says the elect, because that's who it's dealing with right here, were affrighted. Let's see if it provides a precept in dealing with affrighted. Okay, it says, in the same hour was there a great earthquake. In the surrounding page content, the Most High responds immediately to the resurrection and ascension of the two witnesses, which the two witnesses represents the two kingdoms, the northern and southern kingdom, which, you know, corresponds with the prophets. It says, same hour means no delay, judgment falls instantly. The event is directly tied to the witness's vindication. Earthquakes in Revelation often signal divine intervention or judgment. It says, in the 10th part of the city fell. The city in the surrounding verses is the great city, which is America, spiritually called Sodom and Egypt. You know, Sodom because the whole alphabet agenda, you know, and Egypt, as Egypt is an allegory for bondage. You know, America's known for hardcore chattel slavery. It says the place where also our Yahweh Shai was crucified meaning to be crossed out. And then they set up Cesare Borgia as the image of what they injected into the scriptures, Jesus Christ, which we know his name not to be Jesus. We know his name to be Yahweh Shai. It says a 10th part falling means a significant but partial destruction. Now, we know that America is going to be fully destroyed. You know, a divine warning rather than total annihilation. It shows judgment with restraint. In the earthquake were slain of men 7,000. This is a specific symbolic number. In the surrounding context, it shows the earthquake is deadly, the judgment is real, not symbolic only. The number is large enough to terrify survivors. The death of 7,000 marks the seriousness of rejecting the Most High's witnesses, which is going to be more than 7,000. You know, it might be 7 million. You know, seven is just a number biblically in numerology, or I should say, in its proper context in biblical numerology. Number seven is just a number for completion. It says in the remnant were affrighted. It says remnants refer to the survivors, those who did not die in the earthquake. They are affrighted, overwhelmed with fear. This is the first time in the chapter that the people respond with fear of the Most High rather than mockery or celebration. It says, and gave glory to the power of heaven. So who will give glory to the power of heaven, man? If you were a remnant of this destruction and you were affrighted, let's look up the word affrighted. This is from Etma Online. This is the word affright. Frightened, terrified, alarm, mid 15th century. Struck with sudden fear, right? So if you were affrighted and you were a remnant but gave glory to the power of heaven, chances are that it's talking about the elect, you know, and it is talking about the elect. So going back to co-pilot, it says, and gave glory to the power of heaven. This is the climax of the verse. In the surrounding chapter, the world rejoiced as the witnesses' death, refused to repent earlier chapters, but now, uh, in the witnesses' death, meaning, our people fell from who they were, discontinued from their heritage, and lost, their strength, which their strength is their obedience to Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushua. It says, and you see that concept with Samson now. His strength was the fact that he took the Nazarite vow, and if he cut off his hair, he'll lose his strength. Well, if you cut off that connection to Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushua, people lose their strength. It says, but now fear leads to acknowledgement of the Most High. The survivors recognize divine power, which in other passages, right, it talks about how they didn't repent. So there's a clear distinction between those that were affrighted and gave glory, and then those that didn't repent of their sins, right? It says Yahweh's judgment precedes a moment of reverence. This is one of the rare places in Revelation where people respond to judgment with giving glory instead of rebellion. Because in this verse is speaking about the elect. So going back to co-pilot, great earthquake equals destabilizing judgment. Not always literal seismic activity, can be political, economic, or military upheaval. But what will destroy a tenth part of the city? Tenth part of the city fell equals a measured portion of Babylon or America's collapses first. So let me read that again. It says a measured portion of America collapses first, a precursor strike, a destabilizing blow. So what's going to happen is going to be a precursor strike, because when you think about all these systems that I want to say erected from these wars, let me see something. So what came out of World War One? The League of Nations. So after the war, it produced the League of Nations, right? And I'm gonna read about it. It says after World War One, the victorious Allied powers created the League of Nations. In 1920, under the Treaty of Versailles, its purpose was to promote international cooperation. So they're trying to uh, bring the world into cooperation, into a system to prevent future wars, to resolve disputes peacefully. This is confirmed directly in the search results. The League of Nations was established in 1920 after World War One. It was created to promote international cooperation and to achieve peace and security. The League ultimately failed to prevent World War II and was dissolved in 1946 with its functions handed over to the United Nations, right? So World War One produced the League of Nations. Now let's read this. What came out of World War II? The United Nations after World War II, the world recognized the need for a stronger, more effective international body. Thus, the United Nations (UN) was founded in 1945. The UN was intentionally built as a successor to the League of Nations. The League formally transferred its assets to the UN in 1946. The UN was designed to correct the weaknesses of the League and prevent another global conflict. He answered another question. So, put up the hyphen in there. Okay, so I said, so therefore World War III would be another international co-op, possibly a technocratic world order, the New World Order, based on digital systems and implantable technology. Uh, Let me see. Let me just read it. It says, I hear the line of reasoning you're building World War One, League of Nations, World War Two, United Nations. So the next global conflict might produce another kind of international system. That's a common pattern people point out. But here's the key thing I can help you do. Separate what the historical pattern actually supports from what moves into speculation. Let's break it down. Yes, major global wars have historically produced new international structures. This part is historically accurate. World War One, League of Nations, World War Two, United Nations. Large-scale conflict tends to push nations toward few forms of cooperation, treaties, and global governance structures. That's a real pattern. But predicting World War III equals technocratic world order is speculative. Okay, which is I don't have a problem with it being speculative, right? Because it hasn't happened yet. AI, what it doesn't have is vision. You know, it says there's no factual or historical evidence that a future global conflict will automatically produce a new world order, a technocratic global government, digital implants, centralized digital control. Those ideas exist in theories, fiction, and speculation, but they're not grounded in any confirmed political plan or historical inevitability. Why people connect modern technology with future global governance. This comes from observable developments, rapid digitalization of economies, global supply chain interdependence, digital identity systems, biometric authentication, AI driven governance tools, international cybersecurity frameworks, global coordination or pandemics, climate, and finance. These trends make people wonder whether future global cooperation might be more technological, more centralized, more digitally integrated. What we can say without speculation, if a major global conflict ever occurred again, history suggests nations would likely form new alliances, global institutions might be restructured, technology would play a major role in what comes next. Um, it says George H.W. Bush gave, both of which often get discussed together, a thousand points of light, a new world order. They sound similar, but they came from different contexts and mean different things in its own usage. A thousand points of light, what Bush actually meant. This phrase comes from Bush's 1989 inaugural address. It was not about global government, it was about volunteerism and community service inside the United States. Bush used a thousand points of light as a metaphor for charities, nonprofits, community groups, people helping others. He was trying to promote civic responsibility in local service organizations. So, in context, it was domestic, not global. A New World Order, what Bush meant in 1990, 1991. This phrase comes from speeches during the Gulf War era, especially after Iraq, which, this is fluff. Uh, 3 World Wars letter at, attributed to Albert Pike has no verified historical source. Esau tries to say, in order for it to be true, it has to be verified by, one of them, which is basically when you go to these institutions, that's what they want. They want something that's, you know, academically, approved, or things that are peer reviewed, and which is all madness because they're putting their own uh, beliefs into what they perceive to be the truth, and most of the time it's not. It says the claim usually goes like this: in the 1870s, Pike wrote a letter to Giuseppe Mazzini. The letter supposedly outlined three future world wars. Each war would reshape global power and lead to a new world order. But here's the key fact: no original copy of this letter has ever been found. Not in Pike's archives, not in, and that's the same thing they did with Jay Rockefeller. They said he didn't exist. And clearly, he's not a hologram talking to Aaron Russo, right? They call it plausible deniability. It says not in any library, museum, or historical collection. The earliest appearance of the Three World Wars text is decades after Pike's death in writings from the mid 20th century, long after both world wars had already happened. Let me see. Slocky. I was trying to think of something. Oh, yeah. Okay. Ron. Plausible deniability is a real concept, but it doesn't automatically apply to every disputed claim. Plausible deniability is used in intelligence operations, political strategy, corporate risk management. It means a person or organization structures things so they can deny involvement because there's no direct evidence tying them to it. But that concept only applies when there is an operation, there is evidence. Evidence is intentionally obscured. It doesn't apply automatically just because something is denied. The Albert Pike Three World Wars story isn't denied, it's just unsupported. So, it's just unsupported. So it doesn't mean that it's not true. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to be persuaded in your own mind. But going back to the other portion of AI, it says GMS teaches this is an incremental collapse leading to total destruction. Isaiah 47. Lament for America. Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Right? Dust, you know, represents basically destruction. And, you can also apply dust to confusion. And the reason why it's declared, or I guess I want to say the word omitted, that it's a virgin is because it's never been touched by war, right? Sit on the ground, he's going to be humbled, right? There is no throne taken out of power, O daughter of the Chaldeans. Now, the Chaldeans are the rich elite bankers, you know. which America is nothing but a corporation, really an experiment. It says, "For thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate," you know, and that's how these nations are looking at America, man. As being, let me see, the violent nation that it is. Let me see. Real quick precept. This is Isaiah chapter 14, verse 4. It says that thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon. Right now, the king of Babylon is Donald Trump, who is that cruel Lord, right? And say, how have the oppressor ceased? The golden city ceased, the number one superpower. And it is the oppressor. Look what it's doing in Nigeria. Look what it's doing in Venezuela. Look what it did in Iraq. Look what it did in Iran. Look what it did in Afghanistan. Look what it did in China. Look what it did in Japan and the Koreas and Vietnam and Europe, Yugoslavia. The list goes on and on. Cuba, the Americas. It says, Yahweh have broken the staff of the wicked and the scepter of the rulers. He who smote the people in wrath with the continual stroke, these constant wars. He that ruled the nations in anger is persecuted, and none hindereth. No one is gonna try to convince wrath otherwise. Right? The whole earth is at rest and is quiet. They break forth into singing. You know, so it says, sit down in the dust equals humiliation, loss of power. Virgin daughter untouched by foreign invasion historically until the end, right? Jeremiah 51, verse 8, it says, Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. Howl for her, take balm for her pain, which balm is like an ointment, to remedy you or whatever ailment, if so be she may be healed. We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her and let us go, everyone into his own country. Which you're going to start seeing a mass exodus of, these heathen nations leaving America. For her judgment reacheth unto heaven, and it is lifted up even to the skies. Because it's going to be a bellowing smoke, nuclear smoke, nuclear fallout, nuclear winter. It says suddenly equals no long warning, no gradual decline, nuclear strike, internal collapse, or both. It says one post shall run to another, communication collapse overlay. Let's see, 51:31. This is Jeremiah chapter 51, verse 30. It says, the mighty men of Babylon have forborne to fight. You know, it says, the mighty men of America have forborne to fight. The mighty men are Babylon's elite warriors, the strongest defenders of the empire. But in the surrounding page content, the Most High is breaking Babylon's power. Their might have failed the mighty men have remained in their holds, the men of war are affrighted. So the warriors stop fighting because they realize the battle is hopeless. It says they have remained in their holds. Instead of defending the city, they retreat. They hide in fortresses or defensive positions. They refuse to engage the enemy. This matches the surrounding theme of Babylon's sudden collapse. The passages are stopped. Her bars are broken. The defenders are overwhelmed and immobilized. Their might have failed. And they bask in their perceived might. All right. It says this is the heart of the verse. Babylon's military strength, once feared across the world, is now broken, powerless, ineffective. The surrounding chapter repeatedly emphasizes that the Most High himself is the one breaking Babylon's power, right? Just as it was Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushua that set up America. It says, I will render unto Babylon all their evil. I am against thee, O destroying government. Because mountains and hills represents governments. It says the strength fails because the Most High removes it. The Most High is going to remove the terribleness of these demons, man. It says they became as women. In ancient Near Eastern language, this phrase means they lost courage, they became fearful, they were no longer acting like warriors. It's describing the collapse of morale, not gender. The surrounding verses reinforce this. The men of war are affrighted, their might have failed. They have burned her dwelling places, her bars are broken. This describes the physical destruction of Babylon. Buildings burned, defenses shattered, gates, bars broken. Surrounding page content shows Babylon being systematically destroyed. Her cities are desolation. The wall of Babylon shall fall. Her dwelling places burned with fire. It says, one post shall run to meet another, and one messenger to meet another, to show the king of Babylon that his city is taken at one end. And that's dealing with the entirety of America, man. And, you will have to think it will be on the West Coast, It says, that the passages are stopped, and the reeds they have burned with fire, and the men of war are affrighted. Because these military men and men in general, they're not going to be ready for what Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushua has in store, concerning showing his wrath. It says, and that the passages are stopped in the surrounding chapter, Babylon is being invaded. And you could read that too in Ezekiel, the 38th chapter, which confirms there's a pattern of truth. It says passages refers to river crossings, entry points, strategic routes into the city. To say they are stopped means the enemy has seized control, escape routes are cut off, supply lines are blocked, America is surrounded and trapped. It says, in the reeds they have burned with fire. Babylon was surrounded by marshlands and reed-filled areas along the Euphrates. Burning the reeds means the invaders are clearing the terrain. Defensive hiding places are destroyed. Natural barriers are removed. The enemy is advancing unhindered. This detail shows how thoroughly the attackers are dismantling Babylon's defenses. It says, and the men of war are affrighted. This ties directly to verse 30, where Babylon's mighty men forborne to fight. Their strength failed. They became as women. Here, the report confirms the soldiers are terrified, morale has collapsed, the defenders are no longer resisting. Fear has overtaken the army as the city falls. Continuing this verse 33, for thus saith Yahweh of armies, the power of Yasharallah, the daughter of Babylon is like a threshing floor. It is time to thresh her. Yet a little while, and the time of her harvest shall come. Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, hath devoured me. He hath crushed me. He hath made me an empty vessel. He hath swallowed me up like a dragon. He hath filled his belly with my delicates. He hath cast me out. The violence done to me and to my flesh be upon Babylon. Shall the inhabitant of Zion say, and my blood upon the inhabitants of Chaldea shall Jerusalem say, which links up with Numbers, I believe 35 and 38. Don't defile the land, right? It says, therefore, thus saith Yahweh, behold, I will plead thy cause. And how is he going to plead the elect's cause? By bringing destruction and take vengeance for thee. So, the elect are not to, get their hands bloody, right? Yahweh Bashim Yahshua is going to handle these niggas. It says, and I will dry up her sea and make her springs dry. And how is he going to do that? By fire. And Babylon shall become heaps, a dwelling place for dragons, a astonishment, and a hissing without a inhabitant, because it's going to be uninhabitable, man. So going back to this portion, it says, one post shall run to another equals chaotic, panic, communication, modern equivalent, emergency alerts, military comms, intelligence reports, cyber attack notifications. City taken at one end equals breach, begins in one sector, coastal strike, which is what I wanted to talk about. Coastal strike, which, there was I had a dream. I forget. I think it was when I was in the when I was in the truth, or when I was in the truth. Not saying I'm not still in the truth, but California was flooded, man, and it wasn't no flood that was caused by weather. It was a flood that was very, very devastating, man. And I remember that in the dream that I had to navigate through the neighborhood on a boat. And it just so happens, I still have the same boat at the same house. And, been trying to sell it, but, to no avail. But America might get hit with a multi-pronged attack. And one of the things that Russia could use is the Poseidon nuclear powered drone. All right, let me see. What is this? So there's a little bit of information on it. It says the Poseidon drone is designed to operate at speeds of up to 100 knots. And this is just what they tell you. 115 miles per hour, and can dive to depths of up to 1,000 meters, 3,200 feet. Its operational range is estimated to be around 10,000 kilometers, which is 5,400 nautical miles, allowing it to reach coastal cities and deliver nuclear munitions effectively. The drone stealth capabilities make it difficult to detect and its ability to operate at high speeds and depths enhances its potential impact on strategic locations. It says what a Poseidon nuclear drone could affect, general non-actionable overview. Based on publicly available reporting, the Russian Poseidon system is speculated to carry a nuclear warhead of around 2 megatons or more. Analysts, which I'm pretty sure it's like the Tsar bomber, I believe they could only detonate at 50 megatons in order for the pilots to get out safely as they were testing it. But it could go up to 100 megatons. Easy. All they will have to do is just dial it in. But it says analysts emphasize that its destructive purpose is coastal devastation, not inland targeting. So just imagine if they detonated a few of those nuclear powered drones on the West Coast, man. One in Seattle, one in San Francisco, one in San Diego. It will completely decimate uh, America and its economy. It says what experts say it could do. It is described as capable of devastating a coastal city and causing radioactive flooding. Some reporting claims it could generate a radioactive tsunami large enough to render coastal regions uninhabitable. You know, so it's not that it's gonna cause or produce destruction in which it's gonna wipe something off the face of the earth, but it's gonna cause destruction in a form that is gonna render regions uninhabitable. You know, which America eventually is gonna be uninhabitable by humans. It says how much of the U.S. would that be? This is where reality matters. A 2 megaton underwater detonation would cause massive destruction along a coastline, but it would not take out a large portion of the United States. The U.S. landmass is enormous, about 3.8 million square miles, and even the most extreme speculative effects would be regional, not national. Realistic scale based on expert analysis, direct blast zone, a few miles of total destruction. Severe coastal flooding and contamination, potentially tens of miles along the coast, depending on geography. National impact, economic shock, environmental contamination, long-term displacement, but not physical destruction of a large portion of the country. Uh, Important context, all of this is based on speculation because the warhead yield is not confirmed. The tsunami claims are not scientifically verified. Much of the public discussion is strategic messaging, not engineering data. Let me see a corner about what along with decimation. Skip this. The Bible's framework for decimation. Scripture doesn't describe modern weapons, but it does describe judgment events that involve massive, massive water-based destruction. Let me see Isaiah. We should all know this one. It's Isaiah chapter 29, verse 6. It says, "Thou shalt be visited of Yahweh of armies or host, with thunder and with earthquake and great noise, with storm and tempest and the flame of devouring fire." Right? Uh, Luke 21. It says, the return of Hamashiach, Luke chapter 21, verse 25. And there shall be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars and upon the earth, distress of nations, which we see a little bit of that going on in Iran right now. With perplexity, the sea in waves roaring, which that sea could also represent people in uproars. Or, of course, the Most High is going to cause tsunamis through earthquakes and, through these weapons. It says men's minds, because your heart is your mind, failing them, having strokes, seizures, heart attacks for fear, right? Or, so much in fear that you don't know what to do. And for looking after those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken, because there's going to be a lot of mass destruction. And then it says, Revelation, this is Revelation chapter 8, verse 8. And the second angel sounded, and as it were a great mountain, burning with fire, was cast into the sea, and the third part of the sea became blood. And the third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died, and the third part of the ships were destroyed. And the third part represents the sons of the wicked, which is the Edomites. It says, and the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called wormwood, which wormwood means contamination. And the third part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. It says these passages describe coastal catastrophes, tsunami-like imagery, and fear triggered by ocean upheaval. I want to go into the code. Doing overrides. Dang. So going back to where it says coastal strike, grid failure, there's going to be power that goes off, or military penetration. There's going to be an invasion, right? It gives us Isaiah chapter 13, verses 6 and 8. It's Isaiah chapter 13, verse 6. It says, judgment of the day of Yahweh Shai. How ye, for the day of Yahweh is at hand. It shall come as a destruction from the Almighty. And when you look into that word Almighty, outside it means demon-like power. Therefore shall all hands be faint, and every man's heart shall melt, because they're going to be in fear. And they shall be afraid. Pangs and sorrow shall take hold of them. They shall be in pain as a woman that travaileth. They shall be amazed one at another. Their faces shall be as flames. Right? It says people in shock, systems failing, leadership paralyzed. Nahum 2, which I believe this aligns with Second Ezra, the 5th chapter, dealing with the destruction, the overthrow of Nineveh, which is the capital of Assyria, which is symbolically dealing with Esau. You know, this is Nahum chapter 2, verse 1. He that dasheth in pieces is come up before thy face. Keep the munition, watch the way, make that loin strong, fortify thy power mightily. For Yahweh have turned away the excellency of Jacob as the excellency of Israel. For the emptiers have emptied them out and marred their vine branches. The shield of his mighty men is made red. The valiant men are in scarlet. The chariot shall be with flaming torches in the day of his preparation, and the fir tree shall be shaken terribly. The chariot shall rage in the streets, which is those tanks. They shall jostle one against another in the broad ways. They shall seem like torches. They shall run like the lightnings. See what it says. It says the chariot shall rage in the streets, break down modern armored vehicles, emergency response, martial law. All right. So going to section 3, Poseidon Nuclear Drone capability cited. What is Poseidon? A Russian nuclear-powered, nuclear-armed underwater drone designed for long-range, stealthy second strike capability. Nuclear-powered uses a liquid metal reactor, 15 mega MW for propulsion. Range essentially unlimited due to nuclear propulsion. Depth operates up to 1,000 meters underwater. Speed up to 100 knots, 115 miles per hour underwater. Warhead speculated, so they don't know, 2 megatons or more. Guidance, GLONASS, plus AI navigation. Purpose designed to bypass missile defenses and strike coastal cities or naval bases. Strategic meaning designed for tsunami-level coastal destruction. Intended to guarantee Russia's second strike capability even after a major attack. Putin publicly claims successful testing and that it cannot be intercepted. Prophetic tie-in, Babylon's destruction coming from the sea aligns with Poseidon's underwater approach. Let me see, Jeremiah 51 and 42. Make sure the sea is not referring to the nations. I'm going to start at verse 41. This is Jeremiah chapter 51, verse 41. It says, how is Shishak taken? And how is the praise of the whole earth surprised? How is America become a astonishment among the nations? Because it's going to get brought the fuck down, man. By the ender of kingdoms, by the remover of kings. Our power. Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahshua, man. Verse 42, the sea. Let me see. See what AI says about this verse. It says the sea has come up upon Babylon in the surrounding chapter. The sea is symbolic, not literal. It It represents the invading armies, the Most High sending a massive force sweeping over the land, destruction that cannot be stopped. So the sea is the flood of attackers engulfing Babylon. She is covered with the multitude of the waves thereof. The waves are the many nations, the countless soldiers, the overwhelming force of invasion. Surrounding page content reinforces this idea. The wave symbolizes successive blows of judgment, wave after wave of destruction until Babylon is completely overtaken. So part of that those waves, that flood of armies is dealing with, their weapons too. You're just not gonna have people, flooding America that are soldiers with no weapons and no missiles, no bombs, no helicopters, no jets. They're gonna have those tools of destruction. So all of those things combined add on to it. Destruction is gonna cover this place. Verse 42, it says, the sea has come up upon America. She is covered with the multitude of the waves thereof. Her cities are a desolation, a dry land in the wilderness. Now, this is after the fact. A land wherein no man dwelleth is going to be no man's land here in America. Neither doth any son of man pass thereby. Ain't nobody going to be flying in a plane saying, hey, look, that was America. And I will punish Bel in Babylon, and I will bring forth out of his mouth that which he hath swallowed up, which is the riches. And the nations shall not flow together anymore unto him. It's never going to be a melting pot. You ain't going to be bribed with a gold card. It says, yeah, the wall of Babylon shall fall. It says, but you can see how AI, you got to maneuver AI too. It says, not literal water only, a weapon delivered from the sea. Precepts on the Most High sending dreams. And already talked about the dream that I had, but I wanted to bring a little balance to it. You got to make sure that your dreams align with prophecy, right? This is Job chapter 33, verse 14. For the Most High speaketh once, yet twice, yet man perceiveth it not, which, goes into the number 3, which means understanding. It says, in a dream and a vision of the night, when deep sleep, that which is called REM. REM is the portion of your sleep in which you have the most brain activity. And deep sleep is when your body repairs itself, right? It says, falleth upon men and slumberings upon the bed. Then he openeth the ears of men and sealeth their instruction, that he may withdraw man from his purpose and hide pride from man, right? Because, there's no such thing as free will, man. That's something that, Esau thoughts and thinks of and is allowed to think and promote. So it says dreams used for warnings, correction, and direction. Numbers 12 and 6. This is why I like using AI, because it allows you to touch scriptures that you don't normally hit. This is Numbers chapter 12, verse 6. And he said, hear now my words. If there be a prophet among you, I, Yahweh, will make myself known unto him in a vision. And a lot of things that I believe wholeheartedly in this truth came from a dream. Like the fact that, I believe King Marshall is King David. That came from a dream, around the time where there was a lot of, there was a lot of, for lack of better words, discussion about who or if King Marshall was actually King David, man. It says, and will speak unto him in a dream. My servant Moses is not so, who is faithful in all mine house. With him will I speak mouth to mouth, even apparently and not in dark speeches. In the multitude of Yahweh, Salaki, in the similitude of Yahweh shall he behold, Salaki. Wherefore then were ye not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? So you have to beware if, someone is speaking the truth. You don't know if that man is Yahweh Hashem Yahushua servant or not. Going back to AI, it says dreams equals legitimate prophetic channel. St. Matthew 2 and 12. It says, and being warned of the Most High in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed into their own country another way. So they warned them through a dream. Most High uses dreams to protect and redirect. And then, for balance, I couldn't find, there was a map that I wanted to show, but I couldn't find it. That showed the coastal areas that FEMA came up with that were flooded. Book of Sirach or Ecclesiasticus, chapter 34, 1 through 7. Switch to standard KJV. It says, the hopes of a man void of understanding, which makes him a reprobate, are vain and false, and dreams lift up fools. Right. But certain dreams do come to pass. Like I had a dream about a certain camp and certain people in the camp, and that dream came to pass. It says, whoso regardeth dreams is like him that catcheth at a shadow and followeth after the wind. The vision of dreams is the resemblance of one thing to another, and it be like that, even as a likeness of a face to a face, of an unclean thing, what can be cleansed, and from what that thing which is false, what truth can come. Divinations and soothsayings and dreams are vain, and the mind fancieth as a woman's mind in travail. That they be not sent, if they be not sent from the Most High in thy visitation, set not thy mind upon them. So you have to be able to discern. For dreams have deceived many, and they have failed that put their trust in them. So it says not every dream is spiritual. Some dreams are just mental noise, right? Jeremiah 23, 25 through 27. It says, I have heard what the prophets said, and they were called seers before they were called prophets. Prophets means to say before, that prophesy lies in my name because they have those demons on the left hand side, you know, causing them to be lying prophets, saying, I have dreamed. And don't that remind you of Martin Lucifer King? Which he didn't even write that speech. A so-called Jew did. It says, how long shall this be in the mind of the prophets that prophesy lies? Yeah, they are prophets of the deceit of their own mind, which think to cause my people to forget my name by their dreams, which they tell every man to his neighbor, as their fathers have forgot my name for Baal. You know? It says false prophets use dreams to justify their own ideas. And that's all you people that say, oh, I had a dream and God talked to me or God did this. No, man, no, he did it. No, he did it. You're lying. That's not accurate. That's false. You know? Because it has to be in line with the scriptures, man. And if it's seemingly not aligned at that period, it might be revealed later. You know, the dream that I had about individuals in a particular camp didn't happen until, I ended up being removed out of the camp, you know? But, that came through the will and power of Yahweh Bashim Yahshua and the answering of prayers. This is Deuteronomy chapter 13, verse 1. If there arise among you a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, and giveth thee a sign or a wonder, and the sign or the wonder come to pass, whereof he spake unto thee, saying, so the sign of the wonder come to pass, which that was what Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai allowed to happen in order to test you. Because it goes on and says, let us go after other gods. So he wants you to commit spiritual adultery against our husband. It says, which thou hast not known, and let us serve them. You're supposed to say, fuck you and fuck no. Somebody get the gallows ready where we can hang this nigga. It's the mind state you gotta have, man. You gotta nip wickedness in the bud. A lot of you just let wickedness fester, man, until it takes all you fucking niggas out, man. Verse 3, it says, thou shalt not hearken unto the words of thy prophet or that dreamer of dreams, for Yahweh your power proveth you. So how you know you getting proved, man? How you know you not getting proved? How you know I ain't getting proved? Everybody's getting tested. And the reason why I was, so confident in leaving is something that Elder Apostle Tahar said a decade ago. If you think the Most High is doing, if you think Yahweh Hashem Yahushua is dealing with you, go out there and do the work on your own and see. So fast forward 13 years later from 2013, I'm still doing the work, man. And it's hard for me to go back into the world even if I try. Because I've tried. And just like Jonah, the Most High put me right back on the highways and hedges. Because if I'm wicked, I'd rather go back to the spirit world, as I always said, man. And just like Eleazar, instead of eating that pork, I'd rather them direct me to the guillotine, man. Right? It says to know whether you love Yahweh, your power, with all your heart and with all your soul. Which that should be a challenge, man. If you could do the work on your own, through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashim Yahushua, I pray that, you know, the Most High uses this as a sifting mechanism, you know, and tell and put it in the spirit of Elder Apostle Tahar to issue a decree to set a certain amount of time in which each and every person has to do the work on their own, you know, because there's going to be some that are not going to do it. There's going to be some that ain't going to go to camp. There's going to be some that ain't going to turn a video on. There's going to be some that ain't going to do videos, you know. Only the elect are going to continue to do this work, man, and still maintain their integrity, still maintain the 100% truth, the 100% doctrine. Only the elect, you know. But that will be a real sifting agent, you know. Maybe for from the Passover, a month from the Passover, you know, that solid month. See if you individual has the spirit, the unwavering spirit to go out there and do the work on your own, man. You know, that will I believe that will sift out a lot of niggas, man. It says to know whether you love Yahweh, your power with all your heart and with all your soul, right? I might just pray to Yahweh Bashim Yahushua to make it happen, man. You know, it would be like Job and Satan. You know, do they worship you for naught? Breakdown, it says, even if it, yeah, because a lot of you hide behind, you know, the certain groups that you're in, you know, and think because you're in a certain group that you're automatically of the elect. Well, let's see what happens if you're not in a group and you have to go out there and do the work on your own. Are you still going to do the work? Are you still going to believe? And for the most part, a lot of you don't. It says, even if a dream comes true, if it leads away from the Most High, reject it. Let me see. What else did I put right here? Because it's long too. The Bible. The summation. I did that. Sudden overwhelming judgment. The Bible described the summation of a nation. Mm. Let me see. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else I can bring out before I conclude this video. Because it was always a combination. Let me read this. Biblically, judgment is almost always a combination. Scripture rarely shows one isolated event. Instead, it shows multi-vector collapse. Now, I'm not saying that it's just going to be solely the Poseidon platform. America's going to get hit with a lot of shit, man. That's just, you know, what I'm focusing on this particular video, you know, because I kind of like shit like this, like this war type shit, man. It says environmental, economic, military, social, spiritual, political examples. Egypt, which ancient Egypt was called Martazarian, says plagues plus darkness plus economic collapse plus military loss. Babylon, internal corruption, external attacks, sudden fall. Jerusalem, 70 AD, famine, siege, political division, invasion. In Revelation, dealing with America, trumpets, bowls, seas, seals overlapping. So, yes, the Bible's pattern is stacked judgment, not single event destruction. A single coastal disaster, natural or man made, would not equal a tenth of America, but a combination of coastal destruction, economic collapse, infrastructure failure, internal division, geopolitical conflict, environmental fallout could absolutely affect the nation at a scale that feels like a tenth, even if it's not literal landmass loss. This aligns with Revelation's symbolic math. It says, so the answer is yes, a combination of coastal catastrophe plus national instability can symbolically align with the 10th judgment in biblical terms, even though no single event will physically remove a tenth of the land. It says, even if multiple nuclear platforms existed in theory, the United States is too large for any combination of strikes to physically remove or take out a tenth of its landmass. That's not how nuclear effects work. It's not how geography works. So the literal answer is no, even combined, they would not physically equal one tenth of America. But that's not the real question you're asking. What if one tenth is dealing with the people? Let me see. I'm going to end it on this. Okay, one tenth. What is one tenth of the U.S. population? Based on current population estimates, the U.S. population is about 340 million. So one tenth of 340,000, or one tenth of 340 million equals 34 million. One tenth of the U.S. population, 34 million people. How many people live on the West Coast? The West Coast states are California, Oregon, Washington. Sometimes Alaska and Hawaii are included, but the core Pacific Coast is California or Oregon, Washington. Search results show the West Coast population was about 51 million in 2017 and has grown since. More recent state by state estimates, California 39.66 million, Washington 8 million, uh, Oregon 4.25 million. Roughly 52 million people live on the West Coast. How does that compare to one tenth of the U.S. population? One tenth of the U.S. is 34 million, West Coast population 52 million. So, that could just be an exuberant amount of people being put to death, man. because a lot of you are going to be misplaced. A lot of you going to migrate probably to the American side of things. But it's very, very possible, and I have a feeling that Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai is going to reveal more real soon, man. So with that, I hope at least one brother of the elect was edified, and I'm going to say shalom.